try to sit up as high as I can because I'm little. Yeah, you shrink a little. All right, good deal.
Sorry.
Like Tom Cruise over here, need to get me an apple box. Man, I'm firing the wardrobe lady.
Do you need a lint brush? We have two of them.
You know what?
That's how professionally this is all being done. We have lint brushes.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about how great Black Panther's costume design department is, because we're here on a frugal budget working with the real shit.
Yeah.
The Scotch-Brite. Hey, Scotch-Brite.
Yeah.
We'll do this on camera for money next time.
Or we'll stop doing it for money, whatever floats your boat. Hello and welcome to Movies Before and After. I'm Jake, and with me as always is Ben. And Ben, what are we doing today?
I guess let's go see Black Panther, right?
I guess, yeah.
Everybody's talking about it, so
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we have somewhat of an obligation to do it.
I guess, yeah. It's not my first choice. It's not even my second choice. But I guess, it's kind of a big deal. Allegedly, everybody's talking about it. It's broke some records, whatever.
It has broken some box office records. It's one of the fastest grossing movies.
That's right.
And it also had one of the best second weekends.
Yeah. It is actually
in a long time.
in second place for both of those, behind Jurassic World and The Force Awakens, which tied in first for both of those brackets.
So we know we're definitely going to see the Black Panther again, whether we like it or not. There's most likely going to be a sequel to it. I did already see him in some Avengers War trailer.
Yeah, that goofy thing where
Infinity War, is that what it's
Infinity
called?
War, where they
Yeah.
just throw all the toys from the toy bin at the screen at once.
Let me get this man a shield.
Yeah, I guess Black Panther is in it, so we're going to see him there. Which means that this movie is going to be riddled with high stakes for our protagonist. We don't know what his final outcome is going to be.
Well, and I think you and I are a lot alike in that I've never been one to follow comic book stuff. I don't read comic books. I don't generally get into the hype of comic book movies. So I don't know any of the lore associated with Black Panther. I don't know any of the lore associated with the Marvel Extended Universe, except sometimes I show up to see the movies, and most of the time it's kind of a lackluster experience.
Yeah, well, the last Marvel movie I saw was Captain America Civil War, and it was alright. I mean, it was on the low end of alright. Mm-hmm. And the problem is the lore, because I'm very much... I guess a comic book nerd would call me a normie, even though I think that's kind of the inverse of what's actually true. And the problem I had was that there were all these characters that I guess had already been established in other places. They have their own stories and their through lines that go through multiple films. And it just didn't translate to some dumbass who likes good movies going to see one of them.
That's my issue with a lot of the Marvel, and actually Marvel's not the only one, just comic book movies in general, so like DC and that too. The thing that gets me is that none of them are treated as movies. It's like everything's got to be a shoe-in that's related to the next one that's coming up, or it's got to be a product placement for the new toy that's hitting the shelves, and this movie over here is going to feature him over here, so we need to make sure that we establish him for the chronology of it, and it's like
that matters.
It's more of a product. It's more of like a theme park attraction that does a road show across movie theaters.
And it's all vertically integrated. Mm-hmm. So you have the promotional tie-in toys, and you have, I'm sure that the 3D showings are going to have special Black Panther glasses, and everything from top to bottom. This film is not just meant to sell tickets for people seeing a movie. It's meant to lift the entire brand, toys, drinking glasses, bed sheets, car liners, everything that you could conceivably make in a factory in China is going to have Black Panther on it. And it's too cynical for me, man.
It's too mass produced.
The franchise model of filmmaking is too mass-produced. There's no soul in any of it, I feel like. And, the first Iron Man was kind of an exception because Jon Favreau made a really fun, exciting, kind of rambunctious movie. We hadn't seen a whole lot of superhero movies that were just fun. A very similar thing happened to Iron Man that happened to Jack Sparrow, is you have a character that works in the context of one film really well, and as soon as you have a movie where you have to change the tone of the character, it's no longer interesting to me. He was in Civil War, and the whole movie, everybody was just mad at each other. I'm mad at you for some stupid reason, and you're mad at me for some stupid reason. I didn't care, honestly, because I hadn't seen the other Captain America movies, I hadn't seen the other Iron Man movie, I hadn't seen any of it. So I'm walking in expecting, okay, well, hopefully I might be a little lost, but I can at least enjoy this movie.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really the case. It felt like dropping into the middle of a season of a serialized cartoon show.
Yeah.
And when I see the trailer for Black Panther, it looks interesting. It looks maybe different.
Yeah, I think so.
Like it's going for a different vibe. And I guess the central premise is how removed this fictional kingdom of Wakanda is from the rest of the world. So maybe, just maybe, we're going to get a standalone story that doesn't have to be propped up by a million prequels.
That's what I'm intrigued to see. There's just something generally about the trailer of this movie that got me kind of psyched. Like, they had this, I think it was Run the Jewels song that was in it. And it does kind of look like it has a little bit more of a mature vibe kind of going on with it. I don't really have a problem with the core concept of a comic book company making movies that integrate together with one another, but I think to some extent, if you're going to make a movie, it should work as a movie.
As a movie.
Any given film should be able to kind of prime someone who doesn't know anything into the rest of it. And that's one of the things that's lacking in Marvel, but I think maybe this movie could be an exception. It's directed by Ryan Coogler, who did Fruitvale Station and Creed, the follow-up to Rocky. Okay. Both of those star Michael B. Jordan, who I believe plays the antagonist or villain in this.
From what I gather, he's
I know almost nothing going into this movie. I know obviously there's a lot of talk about the kind of cultural stuff in this movie. Obviously it looks like it centers around a lot of African culture, and a lot of people are really excited about that. And I think that could be really fun and interesting to see.
There's been a lot of political side talk about this movie, bordering on a racially focused narrative. And I have no basis to say this except my gut, but I don't think that there's really going to be a whole lot of that in this movie. I think people are kind of blowing that element way out of proportion.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I really don't think I am. I think Disney Marvel is smart enough to know, like, we might not want to make a socio-political statement in a franchise designed to sell toys. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of the chatter surrounding this movie, as far as that's concerned, is just not relevant.
Well, I think generally too, with the big mass appeal kind of movies, generally any kind of moral that there is to be had in it is usually pretty surface level stuff, like love conquers all, or embrace differences. That's fine, but I always hope for just a good story, well told, or just an interesting experience more so than anything. And if you do that, then I'm probably willing to take whatever kind of commentary might.
Yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't be disappointed if they tried. Of course, that would require a very light touch. From what I gleaned from the trailer, you have this central protagonist who's adapting to a role of large responsibility over a kingdom. Mm-hmm. And that's not really something that these movies have done before, is give him a stake or something that he's fighting for that's not just, we need to defeat the blue space laser before it destroys a nondescript city.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's actually something, there might be something a little bit more tangible, a little bit more small scale, and a little bit more real. And I'm hoping that that's going to make it more interesting than any of the millions of forgettable comic book movies that I've snoozed my way through in the last 17 years. However, I don't know. It never started and it's never going to end. It's always been this way. Mm-hmm. That's the way it feels.
I am interested to see a lot of the performances in this movie. Michael B. Jordan is in it. I really like him in just about everything I've seen him in. He's a great actor. I like his hairstyle. It's like kind of these dreads, but they're off to the side.
Oh, he's got like the Jaden Smith thing going
kind
on.
of, yeah, except it's a little more refined than that. But
and not as enlightened.
Yeah. Hard to be as enlightened as Jaden. I'm also wanting to see Daniel Kaluuya, who played the lead Chris in Get Out.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He is in this movie. I don't know to what extent. I just saw him in the cast list. Ever since I saw Get Out, I want to see him in more things. I think he was a really good actor. And I don't think I've seen him in a whole lot of things. I also don't think I've seen our lead, Chadwick Boseman, is going to play the Black Panther.
Chadwick Boseman, the name rings a bell. I
probably
there's something.
Have seen him before, but I couldn't tell you in what right at the moment.
Speaking of not knowing who people are in Hollywood movies, there's also Butthole Eyes from Star Wars is in this.
Hey, Lupita Nyong'o, I'll tell you what, the greatest crime committed against Lupita Nyong'o was making her a CGI character. Because, honestly, she is just one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life.
Well, see, now they're correcting that twice. They're correcting 2 instances of taking tremendously talented actors and just covering them up with CGI, because not only is Lupita Nyong'o in this movie, Andy Serkis is,
That's right, and he's almost unrecognizable in this, too, because he got old.
He got old in middle age.
And we just didn't see that happen, so he's older, he's stockier, he looks good. I mean, nothing against him.
I mean, he doesn't look... Yeah, he's not, like, brittle or anything.
I didn't realize that was him in the trailer until I looked it up later, and I was like, that's Andy Serkis? Because I remember when he was, like, skinny and...
Yeah, he was very Gollum-like.
Yeah, he didn't look too much different than Gollum at one point.
Oh, and Martin Freeman's in this because he's in everything now. Is it a movie? Put Martin Freeman in it.
Yeah.
Who cares what he's doing? Just put him in the movie.
I wonder if part of that is simply because of, like, convenience. Like, either geographical location or the fact that those 2 actors have worked together a bunch of times, because I'm pretty sure Andy Serkis does Smaug in The Hobbit. So
that's true. Well,
Martin
Martin Freeman is like an established character in the gobbledygook of the universe.
Yeah, there's another thing about the universe I didn't know.
Yeah, and I mean that's as much as I can tell you about it. Yeah. And I'm just really hoping that there are some nerds with nothing better to do with their lives right now who are shaking watching us normal people talk about it in very general terms, because you know what? I don't care. If this movie doesn't stand on its own, I'm going to review it as such.
Yeah.
This is not an installment of anything, as far as I'm concerned.
It's a film called Black Panther, and from beginning to end is...
It better be a completed film.
Is what I'm going to look at. But who knows? Maybe... I'm always skeptical of these kind of comic book movies, but maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
High hopes, no expectations.
I mean...
Seems
that's really depressing that's the motto for watching movies these days.
Yeah,
but thanks,
it is
Disney.
What it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go see Black Panther.
Yeah, let's go join the Black Panther movement.
I have seen gods fly. I've seen men build weapons that I couldn't even imagine. I've seen aliens drop from the sky.
Yeah.
But I have never seen anything like this. How much more are you hiding?
Hold up. Let's go.
We are home. My son, it is your time.
Show me my respect and bow down.
You get to decide what kind of king you are going to be. Don't freeze.
I never freeze. revolution will not be televised. Show me my respect and bow down. We own ya, we own ya. We only getting started now, cause we own ya. Everybody think they know me now, cause we own ya. You and I'm a homie now, cause we own ya. I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over. I'ma burn it all.
What happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. Wakanda forever! The revolution will not be televised. Let's have some fun. The revolution will be live.
Okay, so we're back from Black Panther. I liked it. I didn't absolutely love it and think it was amazing, like God's gift to Wakanda or something, like a lot of people seem to think that it is. But there were a lot of things I liked about it.
You know, it didn't really blow my mind, but I sat there and I watched it and I was entertained for the duration, and it was more interesting than an average Marvel movie.
Yeah.
So I gotta give it that. You know, it's really easy to be overly critical for what these movies are intending to be. So I'm trying to check myself and say, okay, it's not exactly high art, and it's never intending to be. And that having been said, it still managed to bring up some interesting questions and answer them, you know, mostly successfully.
Yeah, I think if I'm grading on a curve for, like, comic book movies, this is one of the best I've seen in a long time, mostly because it managed to just stay about one thing.
Yeah.
And that was essentially the fate of Wakanda and how Wakanda would choose to operate in the realm of world politics. And, you know, basically the differences between the protagonist and the antagonist vision of how that should be.
Yeah, and it all kind of boiled down to isolationism versus globalism. You know, if you were to really take a pedantic look at it. And one thing I enjoyed was that the antagonist played really well by Michael B. Jordan. He's actually probably my favorite part of the movie, is that they gave him some really strong motivations and an intention that I, as an audience member, followed his reasoning for doing all of these villainous things. It made sense to me because he wanted to get this wonderful, amazing technology out to the world. And that's fine, but he had some bad ways of doing it. And there's a little bit of what TV tropes would call Freudian excuse. And what that is a tendency for a writer to come up with one childhood bad memory that turns somebody into an asshole for the rest of their life. And his character had that. However, his intentions were ultimately rooted in, I want to help people. I'm just going to go about it in a different way than our protagonist did. And so I actually thought that balanced out pretty well.
Yeah. I will just go ahead while we're on the subject and co-sign on the praise for Michael B. Jordan. He was awesome in this movie. Because I think when you're dealing, especially with like kind of action movies that are meant to appeal to everybody, almost every character kind of falls victim to having like a couple of like cheesy one-liners that they gotta put in for comic relief or to make sure that you're still paying attention. And his character, Killmonger, did not have that. He was kind of always very snarky and had a certain just like a certain realism about his character.
A certain edge.
Yeah, just a certain edge, a certain cockiness that wasn't unlikable. You understood how he contrasted from T'Challa, and so you understood that they both were kind of coming at this thing from completely polar opposites. But like you said, you could understand the motivations of both of them. And the one thing I thought that this movie did that was really interesting was at one point or another, both the protagonist and the antagonist held the same position of power and rank. And not a lot of movies actually do that. So I thought it was interesting to both to stick both of them in that throne situation. You could even argue that the literal very end of the movie sees T'Challa kind of seeing and understanding the other side of it, and understanding the more globalist perspective, and maybe warming up to it a little bit, while still kind of wanting to do it in his own way, to preserve the sovereignty, I guess, of the land.
It's interesting that you mentioned globalism and sovereignty. I mentioned in the before section that I didn't think that real world politics were going to enter much into this movie, and they did, but not in a preachy way, and not in a way where the writers were trying to tell us what to think about their pet politics. They were just using these conflicts in very broad terms to give stakes and motivations to the people involved, which, like I said before that I doubt they were going to try to get political at all, and if they did, they would have to walk a very fine line, and to their credit, they did. They walked a very fine line, and they never once fell off that line.
No.
I mean, it still managed to be highly accessible popcorn entertainment, but just had a little bit more going for it up here than your average movie, which I appreciated. I would have liked to maybe have seen some of these conflicts come to a head through dialogue, character versus character, and less of they fight.
That brings me to probably my biggest complaint about the movie, and that is all of the CGI was pretty awful. Way too many shots that were solely dependent upon it.
There was a lot of green screen shooting in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, almost entire sets.
Yeah, and it just, you could always feel the separateness of the actor from the surrounding. Sometimes you might opt to do that in a creative way where certain things look really artificial while it contrasts with things that look really
organic
or like are the real actors or whatever. But this movie, it was as if they were trying to make it all blend seamlessly, but they just really fell short of it. And I think that doesn't really help when one of the main things you want to do with the movie is show off how beautiful Wakanda is. Yeah. Because if I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of, in terms of the characters and the background extras and stuff, there was this kind of aura of Wakandan pride and ritualistic kind of tribalism and African culture and all that stuff, and that's great, but
it was neat.
But the problem is I didn't really get a feeling for the depth of Wakanda at all, because there were like two sets. There was like the street set, and then there was like the palace set, and then everything else was just like a wide shot CGI cityscape.
Yeah, just a matte cityscape that looked very rendered.
Yeah, it looked very computery, but in a way where it was like we're trying to not look computery.
Yeah, and that's just it. It comes off as a bad magic trick at the end of the day. It just makes the magician look bad.
It takes you out.
It does.
I hate to beat that cliche to death, but it does. It takes you out.
No, it absolutely does. And I think the worst example of it came at a point where I was supposed to be the most emotionally involved, is when you have protagonist and antagonist finally having their physical brawl.
Facing off, and the whole thing was like this weird computer rendering.
It looked like Tron, because the bad guy was orange and T'Challa was purple, and so you had two primary colors in this big, weird CGI space.
Well, and you could tell, like, the actors had nothing to do with the scene because it was just completely in the Black Panther suits, so they were completely free to just animate a computer model. It looked like
it could have been a stunt model for all we know.
If they even did that.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And all of that could have been just whatever, that's fine. Except they did that instead of having a more interesting conversation between the two characters where the ideologies butt heads. Because that's what kept this movie in the pretty good territory from going into the great or even excellent territory. Is just, I wanted them to really dig into those differences. At the end of the day, they just got into a big CGI fight. And Marvel...
Yeah,
this is my issue.
Yeah, my major issue with not only the CGI in the fight sequences, but also just this constant kind of barrage of quick cutting. I can't. Yeah. I don't care. Yeah. Like I tune out subconsciously until the fight is over, and then the next scene where things have kind of calmed down a little bit, and we're getting back into the characters' motivations, or somebody's talking to somebody about this or arguing about that. That was always where this movie was more interesting.
Yeah. Well, even from a craftsmanship point of view, the most interesting action sequence to me was an extended long take. Granted, it was an artificial one. There were artificial cuts, but in the scene where they visit a casino in South Korea, they do an extended cut that wanders through the casino during this fight sequence. And it took a little bit more time on every little window that it's looking at as it's kind of meandering through this fight. And that's where I was starting to really enjoy the action a little more. And then as soon as they stopped doing that, it was just a bunch of quick cutting back and forth and shaky cam. And it's like, I'm going to check back in whenever
this stops doing.
Yeah, when it stops doing this.
And it seemed like there was always like a marked difference in the style of execution between a fight scene and anything else. Like you said, a lot of the other scenes would take their time. I think my favorite sequences of the movie were the beginning in Act 1 when they were kind of establishing Killmonger's character. And he goes into that museum.
Yeah, the museum heist scene.
Yeah, and it's just a very simple scene. There's almost no action in it at all.
A couple of gunshots,
some gunshots,
but very subdued.
But it's really more about how clever Killmonger is and how kind of funny he is in his delivery.
And how unhinged and Johnny on the Spot Andy Serkis's character is.
Right, yeah.
And I want to say, too, that it's really nice to see Andy Serkis's face for a change. Like, that needs to happen more.
How much whey protein did he consume?
Oh, my God. And he's a completely different person.
He is a different person. Yeah. And it was really cool to watch him be a badass.
Yeah. Well, the same thing with Lupita
Nyong'o.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody in this movie, this entire cast gets an A+. Because not a single weak link. Everybody's taking what is just basically a corny comic book fluff movie, but they're all showing up for work, and they're all talented actors in their own right, and then they're coming to bat for it. And there was no point where I felt like anybody was just collecting a paycheck. Yeah. And I was drawn to every character's little intricacies, little quirks, little oddities. And if it weren't for the fact that I'm terrible with characters' names, like that's one thing I really do struggle with, is remembering the name of a character in a movie. I have to look it up after the fact, but I would be singling people out if I could, but I can't.
Speaking of wonderful actors and incredible characters, I gotta tell you, that Stan Lee cameo.
Oh, you know what? I'm really glad you brought that up.
Beautiful, wasn't it?
I'm really glad you brought that up.
Why do they still let him appear in these movies?
Because idiots. Because bottom feeding morons clap. That's why.
Superheroes in New York? Give me a break.
Every time they see that hack breaking the fourth wall in a movie, that's why they do it. Is because it's blatant fan service. trying to please the crowd, and nothing takes me out of a movie more than seeing that grinning fuck Stan Lee. And that's staying in.
I don't care. You're probably editing it anyways.
Then we'll see if I still feel that way once this Red Bull's worn off.
Yeah.
I probably will, though, because I really don't like that. It automatically, I'm like, Stan Lee, I'm watching a movie.
I literally only said that to grind your gears.
Oh my god, like that is that
But
is my
really,
career.
I don't know why. It's just getting to a point where it's so self-important for this guy to keep showing up. Like, you're still alive? Okay,
yeah,
great.
And Stan Lee is being deitized by the comic book community as the end-all be-all creator, and codified when they stick him in movies like that. Mm-hmm. Where I don't really think that's entirely fair. There's an army of struggling artists who bled to make the original vision for Black Panther make it from their brain to paper.
Yeah.
And Stan Lee is just gonna bumble into a casino and, oh, you left your chips? Well, I'm gonna take those. Hi, kids, I'm Stan Lee. Make sure you buy a t-shirt. Bye.
And it'd be better if he served any kind of function other than to just appear.
Yeah.
Because anytime you're doing that, you're just unapologetically padding the time with bullshit.
It's pandering.
And I don't think you need to do that. That being said, actually, on the subject of padding time, there's one thing, certainly this is not the only movie that's guilty of doing this, the one kind of Marvelism or action movie-ism that this movie couldn't get away from is they do these weird cuts to people saying, like, well, shoot him, to the pilot, and it's like the pilot is faced with a bunch of ships that obviously has to shoot, but then, like, some character, we got to cut to some character
character saying
shoot
him, so that the audience knows
like he's gonna
that's
shoot
what
them.
he's doing.
And it's just like, why do we have to have that line? And then there's like another line where Lupita Nyong'o slides in to her friend's side and says, "Are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Let's go. Exit frame." And then we're doing the next thing. It's like, did you really need to have the quick catch up, hey, how you doing thing? Could we just cut to the next shot and we'll see that they're doing good? It's
I get what you're saying.
Literally
I get
just
what you're saying.
killing 20 seconds, like, and every time they cut, it's like, I bet you money that you could go to any other movie that kind of fits this mold and, like, literally verbatim pick the same lines out. So what are you doing as a screenwriter when you're writing those lines? What are you really doing? Are you accomplishing anything, or are you just padding it for idiots?
They're padding.
I know the answer. Well, you're padding it for idiots.
It's a PG-rated movie, and there are children who are going to be seeing it, and they're going to talk down to children because they think they're stupid, and that's the problem.
I don't think this is PG though. I think it's PG-13. Yeah.
Do you think it was that violent?
I think that's like kind of a. Oh well, they dropped a shit bomb in it, so there's no way it wasn't. They said.
I thought you were allowed one shit bomb
in a PG movie. No way.
Not in a PG movie. Oh, okay.
Not anymore. In like the 80s, it was different.
Okay, because I know you're allowed one F-bomb in a PG-13 movie, so I didn't know if you're allowed to scale.
No, you can probably get away with like ass.
Really?
In a PG movie. Jesus. But you better be talking about a donkey.
Why don't they just like... Okay, well that's dumb. Okay, so it's a PG-13
Well, I wish, more parents should be like mine and just let me go see rated R movies when I'm 7 years old. Because
you turned out fine.
Yeah, I'm here. Let's see.
One more complaint. The music. Some things I liked and some things I disliked. The things I disliked just completely trampled over the things I liked. The trap hip-hop beats, awesome. Loved them. The tribal drums and the steady rhythmic sections, loved it. And then they just gloss over the whole thing with that generic Marvel orchestra the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, they build these really cool sounds that fit the tone and the substance of the movie. And then it's the same, like, bum, 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 ba-dum, just slathered over it. I'm like, oh, this just makes it feel generic now.
Yeah, and I gotta say, because I don't know to what extent all the tracks on this album are actually in the movie or just inspired by the movie, but Kendrick Lamar did the Black Panther album, and I listened to that a couple weeks ago, and I really liked it. There's a couple of tracks on it I didn't like so much, but for the most part, it's really good. Kendrick Lamar is obviously really, really talented, and that talent kind of shines through. He had a lot of good features on it, a lot of good collaborations. Like I said, a couple of tracks I wasn't nuts about, and I know not all of them were in the movie. I don't know if maybe some of them were cut for deleted scenes or for runtime or whatever, but yeah, I too also really liked the kind of the trap stuff, and I thought it was interesting because a lot of it would be like what some people might consider kind of out of place. Like you would hear a trap beat over like a nice wide shot of the mountain.
Yeah,
or
and
something like that.
It was an adventurous choice to use, like...
But it was fine. Yeah, I liked it.
Atlanta trap over nature shots, but it worked.
Yeah, it worked really well, and anytime they were doing the tribal dance music or the drums, it was cool, and I noticed that, there's some odd time signatures in there.
It was different, it was exciting, it fit, and it brought me a little bit further in. But then I know that it's a Marvel movie and it has to be a part of a whole and all that, but, like, can we just leave the Iron Man, Thor, Avengers strings out of it for once? Just let this be its own thing, because in every other respect, this movie worked on its own.
Yeah, I had no problem really understanding what was going on from beginning to end. It did the job of telling a story. I didn't stick around to see if there was an end credit stinger. There probably was.
There just was.
So I didn't see that. But having not seen it, I'll say that to the end of the movie, they didn't beat us over the head with the sequel setup. It seemed, there's a hint of maybe there's a sequel to this coming up.
The story could go on, which is the way any good story should end. Is like, our characters are gonna keep going through their own adventures. The end.
Yeah, but it still ended the task at hand.
Yeah,
wrapped it up pretty well. And I did not that I need a movie to give me some kind of a moral of the story at the end, like a lesson to be learned. But I did like that T'Challa, just as our hero, was willing to, even in the end, after all was said and done, kind of consider the perspective of the antagonist thoughtfully.
Well, and they had a nice moment at the end where they actually, as he's defeated, they share that moment where T'Challa and Michael B. Jordan's character, Killmonger. T'Challa and Killmonger are sharing this lovely moment staring at the sunset, and they sort of reconcile their differences. And that's where the movie really works for me, is, they took the time to do that, and that's as you were saying, the end of the movie pays that off, because T'Challa takes that with him and informs the character and kind of completes his arc. So, a well-written movie, I gotta say, I really can't knock it for its story at all. I gotta give that part of it an A+.
If I had to pick one thing that I really like about it, is that it's a superhero movie that wasn't afraid to take time and have conversations with its characters and quiet things down and get into the deeper consequences of actions and their effect on the rest of the world. Because most superhero third act of a movie is like billions of dollars in destruction to a city.
We have to stop the big bomb from doing the thing.
And to this movie's credit, it didn't do that.
No. You had the different colored armies that you could see, like, the red guys you were rooting for and the blue guys were the bad ones and whatever. It had that, but the spectacle kind of comes with the ticket price, so you can't knock it too much, but it still felt much more restrained than a typical, there's the blue space laser, we gotta go stop it before the ticking time bomb goes off and the train hits the damsel.
The other thing that I'll give it credit for is despite the fight scenes not looking great, I'll give the movie credit that they didn't go on forever and ever and ever endlessly. Like they were generally like 5-minute long sequences at most, and then
they broke it up nicely.
Yeah.
The car chase was kind of cool.
Yeah,
it had its moments, and the characters were still able to talk and interact with each other during those fight scenes, which is a good indication that you have strong characters, because it's not just like, okay, the action's going to stop and nothing's going to happen while they punch each other in the face and then the story starts back up again. The story is still evolving, even while there are gunshots and explosions, the cars flipping over and blah, 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 blah. So, that, there's always something going on, and when there's no character development and the plot's not advancing, I don't care how many explosions and car chases and superheroes you have, the movie stops. This movie didn't do that. It got it right.
Maybe now it's time for our weekly arbitrary rating system.
That's right.
What kind of bullshit you want to give this thing?
This is an extremely important scale that we use every week, Ben. I think I'm going to give Black Panther, I give it 4 out of 5 claws. How about that?
Claws? Okay, yeah, I was going to say. All right, you give it the claws. 4 out of 5 claws. I'll give it 3 out of 5 panther teeth. On the necklace thing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a better one. Yeah.
I came up with it a while ago, and I didn't tell you.
Yeah.
We'll see you before and after another movie, again, sometime soon.